By the way, Scum fans, we are the national champions. I don't know if you've heard. I just want you to know that. But I get where they're coming from. There's something to this rivalry. And one of the things you said to me after the national championship game, because of the playoff, is it's diminished. Those were your words, Mark. After the national championship game between us, you said that the game is diminished. And I got to be honest with you, Mark. It's never going to be diminished to me. I'll just say it. Bottom line.
Well, okay, so I want to be here again is another statement that needs clarification that
I'm
I
going to allow
made
you to do it. Go ahead.
because I will never dictate to people how they should feel about anything. That's not my place. We as individuals can feel and hold reverence or a value for any particular sport or game in any way that we want. And for anyone who would come on here and say Ohio State and Michigan is the game and the most important game and is even more important than the national championship game, that's your opinion. That's the value that you place in that game. So I'm not, who am I to take that away from someone? But I'm saying objectively, it's obviously been diminished. Ohio State just won a national championship and lost that game.
Right.
That was virtually impossible forever
Right.
and less possible in the last 10 years or so. Now they could have pulled it off in 2022. So we
Right.
saw a precursor
Yes.
to where we live now. I actually, David, you're bringing up me making that statement after Ohio State won the national championship. I actually said that like hours after the game
Right. You
that they
did.
lost. I said this team can pull it together, and it seems like it's a disaster right now, and this loss is unfathomable as a 23-point favorite, but there's still a there's still a
Well,
championship to win.
I mean, and listen, just in the pecking order, this is for the obvious reason as an Ohio State fan, and maybe some Ohio State fans can do this, but I cannot put this above 02 or 14. There is no ranking for me that can justify this championship above 02 or 14. I would say mainly for that reason, Mark. I don't know if I've already told you that or given you the pecking order for that and said that, but as far as the three championships are concerned, but just for that, I have to still keep it that way.
Okay.
I
So
have to be true to
again,
myself that way. I'm
sure.
just, I
So
got to
so
be true to
again,
myself.
I can't tell you how to feel, but I would also say that it's logical what you're saying. It's not just a feeling. To me, it's logical because now if either the '02 or the 14 championships would have been won in like 2019 LSU style or 2020 Alabama style, where it seemed as though, okay, the writing's on the wall and it's
Hmm.
inevitable and that's where we're headed. No,
Right.
both of those were improbable championships as
Hmm.
well. But obviously they came with a Michigan win
Right.
and, for whomever still cares, a Big Ten championship, as opposed to this obviously had none of the other earmarkings of a successful season except for that they got the opportunity to run through again what is an astonishing gauntlet
No, it
that I
is.
don't think it's appreciated that we have never seen a team in the history of college football beat number, well, they obviously elevated to the eventual number one, but Oregon was number one. So they beat the eventual number 2, 3, 4, 5, and then
Yep.
8 and 10.
Right. Right. Well,
That's insane.
they actually beat was Oregon. I thought was the number one team in the
Well,
country.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right.
But
Yeah.
they took their spot in
Right.
the
Hmm.
eventual poll. So Oregon finished whatever they finished, 2 or 3.
Right.
Um, and Yeah, 02 and 14. Obviously, those for
Well,
many people at various parts of the season, it did not seem like a likelihood that those teams were going to win national championships.
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, they weren't an eighth seed to begin with, Mark. Nobody,
No,
even after the debacle, thought this was the eighth best team in the country.
no,
Nobody did. Anybody with half a brain that watched college football would have said, oh, that's the eighth best team in the country. I mean, let's just be real about it here. They weren't. And so, I mean, getting that seeding didn't make sense and we even talked about them that after the game because once the playoff seeding came out that there's a really good case they should have been ranked ahead of Penn State.
absolutely.
That
I
was
thought I thought I made that case pretty ironclad.
yeah, you did.
Obviously, the head to head, the record is virtually the same 11 and 2, 10 and 2. The head to head on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and then the performance against Oregon compared to Penn State's performance against Oregon.
I mean, I tell you what though, the one thing about the rivalries though, I guess with the 12 team and as we move into even a more expanded playoff, Mark, is what would really become more meaningful, I guess, is if we're going to live in a playoff world, is if we get the rematch in the playoffs.
Oh yeah,
That's really where things, then become, really interesting. And
the
even
first.
more likely to happen, especially in a 16 team playoff, maybe.
Yep, sure it is. The first time we get a rematch of any mammoth rivalry, but
Hmm.
especially that one, will be. I think it'll be fascinating the first time we get it because I thought and wanted. I must have been out of my mind, but I actually wanted it in '06.
Mm.
Uh,
Were you advocating? Wish I would have known Mark Rogers in '06. Mark Rogers would have been out there advocating for the rematch, by the way.
yeah, I was advocating for Michigan being the number 2 team in the country. I did not believe that Florida,
Wow.
for as much as I'm a conference championship guy,
Yeah, that surprises me.
yeah, I wanted to see those two teams play. Well, obviously the national championship game was in Tempe, but yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So my to finish my point, it was going to
Sure.
be that the first time that happens, I think it will just be beyond description in terms of the heightened just intensity and among the fan bases. But if that happens 3 times in 10 or 12 years, then I think it's going to
Well,
lose something.
we were basically a couple of big one missed field goal and maybe a big play from
Yeah.
having that rematch happen in 22.
Yeah. That would have been
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
which would have been the highest rated college football game maybe of all time.
And now that we know what happened afterwards, meaning Michigan won it all in 23 and Ohio State won it all in 24, think we could have had 3 consecutive Ohio State Michigan national champions.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, just think, well, remember 2010 to 2013, you almost had four straight Auburn, Alabama national champions
Yes.
if Jameis Winston doesn't
Oh.
pull off that last
Mhm.
second win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like all the rivalries, though. I mean, Auburn, Alabama. I wonder, how those folks feel about that rivalry, especially now in a 12-team playoff world. Because that's like the second biggest, rivalry probably in college football.
I guess the difference between Ohio State, Michigan, and everyone else is that those are the most likely teams. Okay, first of all, they play the final game of the season.
Right.
So it's not like it's a rematch from the Alabama LSU game in October that they're going to play in the SEC championship game. It's the likelihood, and it's going to happen at some point here, that they play 2 weeks in a row. I don't think we've had that in the history of conference championship games. which makes total sense because we've
Right.
always had divisions in all these
That's right.
conferences. So you're not playing a non-division game for your last game of the season. So I just think we're going to run into a really odd situation that we're not going to like, where one of the teams, if not both teams, already have secured spots in the Big Ten championship game,
Mm-hmm.
or more likely one of them has and one of them has not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to question the incentive. Yeah.
Does this continue to make Mark Rogers long for a different college football world?
Yeah, it does.
I know
Yeah.
it does. Yeah. I mean, listen, I, as an Ohio State fan, have to understand that a 12-team playoff was my salvation last year. I do. I mean, I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to.
And that, and again, I'm not telling you how to think
Right.
and to place this the third among the three this century, but to some people, I bet this was the one that they savor the most because of how bad it was after the game,
Right.
and that they turned it around and captured it.
Yeah. Listen, I had a 50-minute call on Sunday on your show to prove it. So, I mean, you don't have to tell me anything, Mark.
If I
I
had
mean,
this, if I had the staff here, I would be pulling all sorts of former shows and to pull all sorts of clips of our conversations because I would love to hear them. Because I remember making the obvious point. I'm not saying I was some kind of, although I did pick them to win the national, as you did before
yes,
the
I did.
season. We
Yep.
both picked it, and
Yep.
I picked it before the playoff. I picked every playoff game correctly, so I
Mhm.
did predict a Ohio State win over Notre Dame in the national championship game before the playoff started. But I'm sitting here kind of uh, conflicted right after, that week. Let's not take right after the game, but that next week, because I kept thinking, I believe that this is the best team in the country
Yeah.
and they should win this playoff. But now they've been given the toughest path.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, the Tennessee game was the game. That's
Yeah.
what we were going to find out
Yeah.
what mettle that team was, how
Yeah.
they were mentally ready to, you know, are they going to
Sure.
be ready to play, after that debacle?
Yeah.
And they were. And they
It
just
was, in a sense, a with a better outcome. It reminded me of the Georgia game. I didn't know how that team was going to respond.
right. I still think the Georgia game was about a quarterback though having like a generational performance though.
True.
Like
Yeah.
the Tennessee game was like an all around performance.
Yeah.
So that's how I take it.
But they were playing a better team.
Oh, that's true. Good
Yeah.
point. Good
Yeah.
point. And for that game to be close, he had to have that kind of performance for Ohio State to have a chance to win.
Yeah. I
So,
watched that game maybe about 6 weeks ago.
oh, you do the same thing I do. I just watch a bunch of replay a bunch of Ohio State games in my off season.
I watch a lot of NFL games in my off season.
What are you going back and watching 70s Dallas Cowboys games, Mark?
I actually watched the last.
Just
Well, I
joking.
do. Yes, I watch more Dallas Cowboys games than anything on YouTube
Yeah.
in sports. But I also watched strange things like a couple weeks ago, just because it popped up on my YouTube screen, and then I am a sucker for history. I watched the Kansas City Chiefs 1969 playoff run.
Oh wow. Yeah. Well, I just on NFL Network watched they had the two great Raiders playoff games from the 70s, the Sea of Hands catch,
Oh
and then
yeah,
the Ghost to the Post where Dave Casper beat
yes,
Burt
against the
Jones and the
Colts.
Baltimore
Yeah,
Colts.
that was one of the first Sports Illustrateds I remember seeing.
Okay.
It was a shot of Dave Casper with the ball coming over his head.
Yeah. Poor Burt Jones. Tough loss for those Baltimore Colts.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
had really good teams.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always those teams that get caught up in the mix, Mark, in the
Yeah.
NFL. They had their run and then that was it. So.
The one matchup we were deprived of in the 70s and 80s was a Cowboys Raiders Super Bowl.
Right.
And
Right.
it's astonishing how many times that one of them reached the Super Bowl and the other lost a conference championship game, that they just missed each other so many times.
Yeah, we've been deprived of a lot of great Super Bowls, of all time. I always say one of the best of all time would have been '98 Denver versus
Oh,
Minnesota,
sure.
which should have been the Super Bowl that year.